Hello and good evening, and welcome to the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers monthly webinar. This is the webinar for June, and this evening's topic is going to be stormwater drainage and our island's development. And this is going to be delivered by Engineering Fellow Andrew Hutchinson. Before we get going with this evening's presentation, I just want to remind you of a couple of things. This is a CPD event. That is, it is a continuous professional development event, and it carries a value of 2 CPD points. Please contact our secretariat to have your CPD information forwarded to you should you wish to claim those points. So this is how these webinars are ran for those of you who might not have attended in the past. We introduce our presenter, and Andrew is going to present for between 30 and 40 minutes, and then once the presentation is complete, we're going to have an open session where our audience are asked to interact with our speaker through questions. This can be done either by raising your hand, at which time myself, the moderator, will acknowledge you and invite you to ask your question in person. Alternatively, you can post your question in the chat and I will answer the question on your behalf in case you are in a position that you cannot answer directly. So Engineer Andrew Hutchinson really needs no formal introduction because he is well known in Barbadian engineering circles and certainly throughout the Caribbean. He is one of the foremost professionals and experts when it comes to engineering and storm water management, drainage, etc. So we are in for some interesting information this afternoon, and I think we all will have some takeaways from it. Before we jump to Andrew's presentation, I just want to remind the membership, those of you who are members of BAP or support our activities, of a couple of things. We do have the Angus Edgell Scholarship, and that the last date for submissions for consideration for that scholarship is today, June 30th, the last day of the month. So for persons who might have had young ones that were looking to apply for this scholarship, today would be the last day, and then the delivery or the is for scheduled for the end of July. So if you still haven't sent in your information, or if you have a young person who was looking to apply for this scholarship, they need to get that information into us before midnight tonight so that their application can be considered. So this is something very exciting. The Edgell family contacted us and we were happy to partner with them to offer this scholarship to students who are pursuing engineering degrees. So just remember, today's the last day. If you have a young person who's looking to apply for this scholarship, they must have that information into us before midnight. Apart from that, we have the annual awards dinner, which is going to be coming up on the 10th of October of this year. And we are looking to engage with partners, sponsorship partners for that event. Some of you will receive a letter letting you know what sponsorship packages we do have on offer. But if you are willing and you would like to partner with us and you don't necessarily need to wait on that letter, we'd ask that you just reach out to Stacy at the office and we can have a chat to see how you can assist us in bringing this event. We are fortunate again this year to have the President of Barbados in attendance. And as everyone knows, we do have a new sitting president. So this will be his first year joining us for the event. Along with this, the annual dinner, which is the 10th of October, obviously will be the engineering project of the year. And those persons who are considering elevation to fellowship, both sets of information, if you haven't received it, will be forwarded to you, the membership, shortly. And the closing for the engineering project of the year is going to be the end of July. So we would like to get those projects which you have been working on across the engineering gamut, get those in so that our review committee can start to go through the various applications so that we would be able to line up who that potential winner will be for the dinner come 10th of October. So those are some of the interesting things that are going on. one last thing I would like to mention is that the association has recently launched its new website, and we would ask that if you are a member, that you go onto that website, you register, and you browse around to see what's on the website. And as you can see there, this is the front page of the website, quite contemporary, modern looking. And we do want this to be a tool that you utilize as membership. So please do jump onto the new website, have a look around, make sure you register and use the resources that are on there. We have copies of our engine room journal that goes out, and we also have previous recordings of webinar sessions which you can have a look at. So you see this drop-down menus at the top where you have the resources. You go into there, you'll see the CPD events, the scholarship, the video library, and some other informative publications, code of ethics, bylaws, etc. So we are asking you to be curious and to go and have a look at the website. Make sure you register and utilize the tool that is on offer. So that's it for um, the ads, as it were, for this evening. Also, we do have sponsorship packages for companies who may be interested in sponsoring our webinars going forward or the Engine Room articles that come out. If you are interested in that, partnering with us for one of those packages, please reach out to Stacy. And basically, for the webinars, your company website, your company information, logo, etc., would go out as part of what we do monthly. And of course, all of those sponsorship activity helps us to be able to run BAPE and offer things like scholarships and do other things that you, the membership, can benefit from. So we ask that you reach out and get engaged. So without further ado, Andrew Hutchinson, a fellow of this institution, and a member of several international bodies. Andrew has worked not only in Barbados, but throughout this region and has done projects wide and far. And I'm going to let Andrew say a little bit about himself for those of you who may not know him. And then he's going to jump straight into the presentation for this evening. So Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, Vincent. I just wanted the little video clip of me on this with the backdrop shows me at the beach, but I'm not actually at the beach. So before people get carried away thinking I'm on the beach, it looks great, but I'm not on the beach. Um, yeah, those of you who don't know me, I'm a Barbadian. I practice engineering. I graduated in 1971, and I practiced engineering in Barbados and across the Caribbean for 55 years. So that's, I've done a lot of structural engineering, a lot of stormwater drainage, um, sewage systems, quite a diverse range of projects. Um, I would like tonight to say though that after 55 years of practice, I think that it's appropriate that I share some of my experiences. One of my displeasures with BAP over the years that we've never been able to get our engineers to properly share their experiences. In the small Caribbean societies that we live in, I believe there's a fear that, you don't want to share what your knowledge is because your competition might learn something from it or something to that effect. I don't agree with that, but I have decided after 55 years that I'm no longer competing, so I'm happy to share my experiences for the benefit of others who are coming behind and who may be developing some practice. So let's start tonight by this subject on stormwater drainage. Stormwater drainage is um, very, I don't think it's given serious consideration in Barbados. You know, for decades, we've had flooding periodically, and it hits the news. We talk about it for maybe 5 days, and then it goes away and we forget about it. We don't fix it. So stormwater drainage I often refer to as the outside child of engineering because it's not given this serious enough consideration. And that's particularly true in Barbados, where we are to some extent blessed by most of the island is covered by a 100-meter thick coral cap, and we love to use these suck wells. So it's generally felt across the island the solution to drainage is suck wells. If one don't work, do two, do three, do four, whatever, but put another suck well. But I'm afraid there's a lot more to stormwater drainage than suck wells, and I'll demonstrate some techniques tonight in this presentation. So what are we going to do? We're going to look at some historical data, the bigger watersheds in Barbados, and look at some flood events, some outstanding flood events. I'll touch on some basic hydrology. Then I'll discuss a few projects. Woodburn Park, which has been subjected to flooding. The estates at St. George, it's not being flooded, but it's a fairly new project, and I've designed all the stormwater drainage there, so I thought I would um, present some of the design considerations and things that we did there. Kensington Oval, again, is finished, but there are some interesting features I would like to explain. And then I look briefly at Galleon Bay and Galley Bay in Antigua. I've done two studies there, and I've also done a study in Belize in the Corozal district. So let's move on. So very briefly, we need to look at history, and many in the audience may not be aware, but these are some of the largest watersheds, catchments, if you wish, in the island. Constitution River, 13,000 acres. Bruce Vale River, 8,900, and so forth. Woodburn Bottom, St. Philip, has an enormous watershed, 8,700 acres. You hold Tongue Hole, 3,000. Spitestung, the gully that comes into Spitestung, 2,000. River Bottom in St. Philip, 4,500. And just to remember there too, we have an excellent gully system for our stormwater drainage. There's a total of 550 kilometers of gullies in Barbados that facilitates drainage to the sea. Okay. Now, lest we forget, I've used this map before. Some of you may have seen it. It is very pictures worth a million words. This is a classic example. You can see the blue months are the months with rain. So there are 5 rainy months. And most of the other months, January through May particularly, are particularly dry. But this explains the climatology of Barbados in terms of rainfall. The little chart in the middle, you will see that Barbados on the lower edges in the yellow area gets about 40, 45 inches a year. And then the other areas get 50, 55. And in the middle dark blue areas, the higher escarpments, you will get as much as 75, some years 80 inches a year. So that's a picture of the rainfall situation in Barbados. Um, oh, now let's look at some historical flooding events. Woodburn, it was then referred to as Sober's Bottom, but there was a very major event that took place in 1818 and is documented in Schomburg's History of Barbados. Woodburn, apparently rain fell for, according to the report, close to 3 days, and Woodburn filled up. The whole valley, I mean, it's a big basin, it has no outlet really, and it just kept flooding and water levels kept rising to the extent they were worried that it would rise so high that the water would flow and go west through the valley, St. George Valley, and flood Bridgetown. What in fact happened was not that. when it raised a certain level, it went east, behind Emerald City through Diamond Valley, as it's called, and down onto Crane Beach via that road that many of you probably go when you're going down onto Crane Beach. And that happened in 1818. Huh? Now that that was before all of the current infrastructure development we now have and buildings and so that which will increase runoff. So you can just imagine what would happen if rain fell now for 3 days. There's the 1901 Jordan flood. That was on 2nd of July, an early one. That's a big event. 559 millimeters of rain, almost 2 feet of rain, 24 inches of rain over over in one day in 24 hours. That was in the north of the island, mainly St. Peter area got the brunt of that. Then there's the Constitution River watershed. There's the flood, which was in 49. That was a big one. And 1970. I I had just come back from university in 71, so I remember the 1970 floods quite well because I then was part of the Wallace Evans and Partners consulting team that worked on the study of um, the flooding of Bridgetown and the Constitution River, and there's a very elaborate report on it. Um, then in 1995, we had the Western flood, commonly referred to as the Carew flood, where Carew lost his life. 2010, Woodburn. This is Tropical Storm Tomas. The watershed experienced just over 8 inches, 220 millimeters of rain in one day. And then in 2016, Woodburn flooded again, little less, 175 millimeters. And then recently we've had the 2025, the Charles Road Bridge. There's about 8 inches of rainfall in the watershed as well. So there's some, I mean, these are just a snapshot. There are a lot more flood events that you could, but these are some of the bigger ones. Now, I brought this picture again. Pictures worth a million words. I don't know how many of you will recognize it, but this is river bottom taken from on top of Finney's Hill. Finney's Hill is the high ground to the south of the river bottom area. Now, I was part of a team, Stantec did a study of the river plantation, river bottom flooding and irrigation requirements and so. So I was very curious. I went up and took this picture shortly after. Now it looks like Lake Ontario. You can't, I mean, look at it. It's a massive lake. A few houses are stuck out in the middle, but this is what can happen. Some other snapshots. This is actually I'm involved in this investment. This is the Trinity Clinic in Woodburn, just across from Woodburn Park. And you see the first photo was taken after the flood of Tomas in 2010. Well, it got flooded, and we had to go in with canoes and dinghies and rescue the animals in there because it's a clinic. They got sick animals in there. And then on your right is a picture of it in 2016. But notice the difference between 2010 and 16. I orchestrated the jacking up of the clinic and putting it onto an island. So the island worked. 2016, you can see the floor level there where the cursor is. There's some steps going up to it, and there's a car park there. The road going in was flooded, but I've since raised the road as well. But these are real impacts from stormwater flooding. Now this is classic. This is the Charles Duncan O'Neill Bridge 1970 flood, October the 2nd, 1970. You can see people standing on the bridge. You can see cars over here. The entire bus stand is flooded. There's a better picture than this I had, but I couldn't find it. This picture was taken after the water had receded. The first picture I had shows, you see these handrails are along the bridge. Those handrails were covered by water. You couldn't see them. And the buses in the bus stand, you could only see the bare top of the buses. So I mean, this is really significant to imagine this entire piece of land from building to cross the road the other side, flooded to that level in 1970. It's like very significant. This is also a shot from the 1970 flood, well, the drainage report came out in 73. You see, it says 14.3 feet on this house. This house is on Culloden Road, um, next to, well, Constitution, next to the river there. And the water was 14 feet above mean sea level, and it was marked there and photographed and documented for the report. So that kind of corresponds with the height of water you would need to go over the handrails on the Duncan O'Neill Bridge. But just some examples of, for those of the more recent generation who haven't witnessed these kind of events. So I want to talk briefly for road widening and its impact on drainage in Barbados. Many of you have heard me speak about this before. A lot of our urban and rural roads were generally built in camber, 150, 2% grade. And most of the rural roads would have these lovely little ditches on either side, earthen drains. And you get the water off the road and provide storage, and then these ditches would store the water and take it away to a suck well or to a gully or something. But then after 1980s, they decided they needed to make roads wider. And so what they did, rather than acquire land, which was a great cost, the decision was taken to fill in these earthen ditches. So you ended up with like a 7-meter road by filling in the earth ditch and putting a curb and slipper. Now, what that does, it completely shoots the idea of drainage because now the road literally becomes a river when the rain falls because the water collects against the curb. There's little or no storage, so the road gets flooded. And that, you know, unfortunately, I think that was a retrograde step that was taken in the 80s. But that's what we have. And hence, most of our roads now, you drive along, you will look, you can observe most of our public roads have totally inappropriate or no drainage. Curb and slippers, and the water just runs until it looks at some low point, and then it jumps over the curb and goes in somebody's land or maybe go in a gully. But there's little or no drainage on most of our roads. Now, I'm going to talk for a moment about suck wells, and this picture is deliberately chosen. This is along the ABC highway, and you see this lovely earthen ditch, and it has some water, there's storage. This is exactly what I'm talking about, especially with suck wells. Suck wells require storage. A suck well, in 90% of the cases, will not take the water, the runoff, as fast as it comes off the watershed. So you need to have storage to store it so that the suck well has some longer time to infiltrate that water into the aquifer. And this picture explains it quite nicely. This is taken along the ABC highway. Suck well infiltration rate is about 1.8 cubic meters per hour per square meter of wall area of the suck well. And this came out of a Stantec study in 78, where they actually did hydraulic loading of a couple of suck wells in the Bell area. And anyhow, that's the end result. They're recommending using infiltration rate of 1.8 cubic meters per hour per square meter. Now, this is an engineer's opinion based on the hydraulic tests, but obviously, if the suck well hits fissures or cracks, it may take 10 times that. So a suck well is a very variable thing, and the engineer designing it has a judgment to make. And if you want to yardstick for your design, you probably best off using 1.8 cubic meters per hour per square meter of wall area. And as I said earlier, the runoff rate is always greater than infiltration. So storage is extremely critical. As an example, a 1.5 diameter, 10-meter deep well at that rate will take about 88 cubic meters an hour. And that corresponds to about 880 square meters of surface area with a 100 millimeter per hour storm, 4 inches an hour. So to give you some kind of AR, if you used a 2-meter suck well, 10 meters deep, you got about 1190. Um, a lot of these stormwater drainage facilities with suck wells I've seen have been, in my opinion, these suck wells have been very arbitrarily selected. I don't think there's, I don't, from what I've seen, I don't think there's much science. You just put a suck well and so forth. Now, hydraulics and inlets. The um, we are quite famous all over Barbados for building box drains, as you see in the top slide, with little curb inlets, little slots in the curb. I mean, that is very poor hydraulics. Most of the water will go past, unless it's in a flat area, most of the water flowing in the slipper will go past the um the inlet and the curb and not get in the box drain. And very often the box drain does not, you do not achieve the efficient use of the volume of the box drain because the water just goes past. I think that's a very poor solution to it hydraulically. Another example below here, here's a curb and slipper on a public road. I wouldn't say where it is, but and there's this grill and a catch pit. So the water is going past the grill. Okay? The grill is being very poorly designed and positioned. Just it's obvious, but sometimes you have to state the obvious to get the point across. On the right now, this is something that Stantec had designed actually on the ABC Road widening project, where we use a bigger grill, catch pit, and it has a curb inlet at the back. Okay? So when the water comes rushing down, we also usually drop the grill about an inch and a half so that you give it a little hydraulic head to increase the capacity. But if the grill can't take it, it can go through that slot into the catch pit. So that is 20 times more efficient than the other situations here. But you see this all over the island. We build these little slots, which are, well, I think they're a waste of time, really. But anyhow, that's how it is. That's part of our cultural um, landscape of roadworks. Now, drainage destroys roads. This actually is Water Authority. This is a classic example of Water Authority fixing a burst pipe and just leaving it to rot and not fixing it, repairing the road. But the other two slides below, you can see this is exactly what I'm talking about. They're very good examples. This road, both of these slots, these are up on where I live in St. John, going to Messiah Street. You will see there's no drainage. So the water comes off the road and finds a little spot here in ponds, and eventually it penetrates, it gets under the asphalt, and over a period of time it gets into the cracks, and you get progressive deterioration of these. But that is all caused because there is no drainage. Okay? I just want to look at some basic hydrology. I think most engineers, civil engineers at university are taught about the rational method. So you work out your peak flow, C, the runoff factor for the watershed, I, the rainfall intensity, and the watershed area, and you get a bingo, you get a flow. That is okay for a culvert, small watersheds. In my opinion, Stormwater modeling with HydroCAD should be used for watersheds greater than 10 hectares. Hectare is about 2.7 acres, 2.47, so 10 is about 24 acres. If you have any watersheds and it goes over 10, 15 acres, 20 acres, I think you should be looking at using stormwater modeling using 24-hour storms. Um, Now, in hydrology parlance, we often talk about TC, time of concentration. Um, Time of concentration is essentially the length of time a drop of water will take from the to travel from the extremity of the watershed or catchment to the point of interest. If you're trying to size a culvert or whatever, the longest the flow path will determine the time of concentration. There are nomographs you can use to estimate that. Um, but again, we always aspire to provide storage for attenuation of flow. Wherever you can provide storage, um, and storage, as I said, complements suck wells. Suck wells can't take it fast enough. You have to store it. But the attenuation of flow is also important because that will, as I will show later, that will increase the TC. If you can get a longer TC, it's beneficial because you're designed for a less intense storm. Check dams for storage in gullies. I've been preaching this for at least 30, 40 years. Not much progress, but we keep plugging away at it. And then storm chambers, storage in rural and urban areas. Storm chambers. Um, there are not many cases. I've used them in, well, 3 or 4 projects in Barbados, but they're not widespread, used in a widespread way. But it's one way of providing storage under your sidewalks without building an elaborate concrete box drain. I'll show you some examples later. Okay, let's do a little look at some technical stuff here. Up in the top right-hand corner, there's an example of a watershed. So the TC will be time it takes to flow from the edge of that purple patch to the point of interest, which might be a culvert. Now, this little graph I've drawn here is the indicative presentation. The dark blue line with the cursor here and following would be the hydrograph, the runoff hydrograph. But as the rain falls, there are losses. The losses are shown below. And then you get detention. In every watershed, there's storage, detention storage. But the net result is a runoff with a curve looking like that. And you see there's the TC, time of concentration, and that's important because you need to consider storms that are equal to or slightly greater than TC, because if you choose a smaller storm, you will not get the peak flow. The storm has to last long enough to cover the watershed and generate for the water runoff to reach the point of interest to get the peak flow. So the TC is a very important criteria to determine in selecting your storm durations and so forth. But what every designer should be trying to do is to manipulate this hydrograph to follow what the dotted line is showing here. And how do you do that? You can do that by going into the watershed and increasing storage and check dams and, other in car parking areas, use more spongy surfaces. So you increase the TC, and you see the TC2 here is longer than TC1. And then if you look at this curve here, these are rainfall intensity duration curves for Barbados, and you will see here I've got it in red for 40-minute time of concentration. A 1 in 10-year storm, you need to design for 3 inches an hour. But if you were able to manipulate your TC by check dams and other means outlined before, you might get a TC of 3 hours, all right, which give you a design 1.6 inches an hour. So this is I'm just trying to demonstrate that you need to manipulate. I use the word manipulate your watershed where possible to reduce the TC, the time of concentration, and that because that affects your design. You will affect your size of your culverts. It gets more economical. Now, here some examples of what I call spongy surfaces. You can use GeoWeb on the left up top. This is we've used it here. It's got Constantina, 4 inches. Some of them are 6. And you can fill it with gravel as below. You can fill it with earth, sand, but it's very good. It also stabilizes the road construction. And when you're finished, you can actually drive on this, cars and trucks. It's pretty good. But what it does, it helps to capture the rainfall and lengthens. This is one way of lengthening your TC. And here's an early project I did. This is the Rocky Beach Park. When I did that, 25 years ago or more. Um, all the car parking aisles are paved with 8-inch blocks turned on edge. We didn't have we didn't have grass street pavers yet. So we used an 8-inch block, flipped it on the side, and then filled it in with gravel and sand. And it's an example of creating a spongy surface to reduce your time of concentration. All right, I got to look at a few projects here. This is the Woodburn Park. I think Vincent knows this well. This is the neck of his neighborhood. Um, Woodburn Park has a history of flooding periodically. I would say every probably 2 or 3 years, sometimes 4 years, but this is real flooding. But essentially, it's a subdivision, residential, and it's impacted by a 250-acre watershed to the southwest. Um, those of you who know the area, it's from as far as Hopefield Plantation, Cane Fields, all slope down towards Woodburn, and flooding every 2 or 3 years, runoff existing. This little small pond here doesn't hold a lot, but this is where it all ends up. No relief outlet, and it has to be mitigated with a large storage pond and suck wells. Um, uh, so a bit of history to it. This is a 10,000 map of the area, and the blue line is 30-meter contour, the lowest contour in Woodburn. So you see this whole Woodburn area floods. Now notice that the 30-meter contour came over onto Woodburn Park here. That's because there was a dip in the road here, the public road. This is the public road from Foursquare coming down here. But in I think it's early 90s, they repaired this road and did some realignment and raised the road and took out the dip. So that acted as a dam so that when this pond floods, there's nowhere for it to overflow into the Woodburn Valley. So it backs up and floods all the houses in this subdivision in this area. Okay. Um, right. Uh, right. So I've actually done a study of it, and um, there's the HydroCAD model. I've used HydroCAD for this, and this is what a typical example of what the HydroCAD model looks like. The hexagons are all the watersheds where you can identify each watershed and the characteristics of it, the TC, the everything about it, surface quality, what it's planted in, whatever. And these watersheds all flow into a pond, P1. So you can then, in your HydroCAD model, you can manipulate that with and put in all kinds of rainfall conditions. And here's a summary table above. 10-year storm, we use 145 millimeters. These are 24-hour events. And up to 100-year storm with 200, just over 8 inches. These are the peak flows coming off. Uh, and this is the volume, and this is the pond. This is the volume of the proposed pond, and these are the top water levels that you will achieve in that pond from your model. So you see it was up to, well, nearly 29 meters. But the pond has to be large enough to facilitate storage, in this instance, for a 100-year storm. All right. And I used two ponds there. I got pond A to hold 38 million liters. Um, and that will go up to like a 20-year storm. And then there's a pond B at a higher elevation, 2 meters higher, will hold 55 million liters. So that for a 100-year storm, pond A and B will be flooded, but for a lesser storm, only pond A will be flooded. This is kind of the output we get. You can see pond A is this long pond here, and we will quarry the rock to create effectively a large quarry. There's four suck wells in it. And then pond B will be an area that we recommend you could regrade, make it into a playing field for community use. But during remote extreme events, like a 100-year event, it will be flooded temporarily. And this is the conclusion, the recommendation we came to protect the houses. See the houses? All these houses down here get flooded. Um, well, no, even a 20-year event. So this is an example of using HydroCAD for this kind of stormwater modeling. I'll look quickly at the estates at St. George. The site is about 5.2 hectares, 12 acres. And there's a watershed south of Highway 5. Those of you who know Highway 5 is the highway coming down that you lead in, you come off to go into estates. There's a 56-hectare watershed that drains onto Highway 5 that goes through the development, through the entrance road, in fact. The existing entrance was, in fact, a gully receiving all the water coming off that 56-acre watershed. So we had a challenge, and I did this when I was at Stantec. So I modeled it in HydroCAD, and we came up with, I used the highway as a pond with curbs, shallow, but curbs. And I put the outlets from the highway were the curb inlets, 8 catch basins, 4 suck wells. And onto the sidewalk on the north side of the highway, we have storm chambers to provide storage so that you can store the water while the suck wells take it. And then there's an overflow facility for like a 50 or 100-year storm. There's a 1.2 meter 4-foot pipe which goes through the site down into the valley to deal with the spillover that will come with a bigger storm. This is, there we designed for a 10-year storm, 188 millimeters per day, and a 25-year storm of 241. This is a quick picture. Landscape architects do things that look pretty. They're nice to look at. So if at the bottom of the picture here, bottom of the slide is Highway 5. And this is the main entrance. So all along Highway 5, I have these 8 catch basins with grills, and I have storm chambers laid all along Highway 5 under the sidewalk. Okay? And along these storm chambers are all connected to, I think there are four suck wells. But then there's an overflow pipe down this at the entrance here that goes right down into the valley. So that storms in excess of 15, 20-year return period could create overflow that will go into this pipe and take it into the valley. And that pipe going down also collects runoff from the car parks and different places into the valley. So this is the estates. I don't know if all of you have been there yet, but it's only partially built out so far. These 4 blocks here and the purple, these 2 blocks down here haven't yet been built. There's 6. There are about six on this block. There are seven more blocks to be built as time goes on, and then you have the back of house down here with the sewage plant and the pond for the storing the treated effluent from the pond plant for irrigation. But this is a snapshot of the estates to try and show. And this here was the best shot I could get of the drainage plan. You see, the blue dashed lines are all drainage pipes. All right. So there along Highway 5, you have the storm chambers, and it goes into the 4-foot pipe down here and discharge in the valley. And there are other all along here. There are catch pits with drainage pipes going to suck wells. But all this localized drainage goes into the 4-foot pipe. This is what a storm chamber looks like. This is the exact one we used at the estate, Storm Tech SC740. And there's a cross section below here. So where we have the catch pits and the inlets, between each catch pit, well, a catch pit has a manhole with it. And between those manholes, we have storm chambers. Okay? Lid, and then we have inspection holes so you can access to do flushing and clean out. But this is how we are creating storage to facilitate, storing the water while the suck wells can infiltrate it. There's a HDPE arch, parabolic arch, and it's bedding. You put down some geotex, and it's bedded. Put some gravel down, and then you backfill around it with gravel, wrap the geotex over the gravel, and then you backfill topsoil. There's a couple of pictures at the estates. There's a beautiful pond lake. And again, St. George, the estates of St. George, this is all rainwater. Rainwater is harvested off of 2 tennis courts, 2 car parks, and the roof of this mahogany building. But this is all rainwater harvesting for the creation of an aesthetic product enhancement. And there's an example again of a catch basin, a proper catch basin with a curb inlet at the back so that, it can intercept the flow. And if the flow is bigger than the grill can take, then it will go into the outlet, the slot. Well, Kensington Oval drainage is again 12.5 acres, 9 buildings. You run off from the field, and all the buildings are collected in 269 storm chambers on the perimeter of the field. As I said before, there are HDPE hyperbolic arches, and they're all interconnected with an overflow, so that when you get the bigger storm, the maybe even 100-year, 50-year storm, it can overflow into a canal going down to the inner basin of the Deepwater Harbor, the shallow draft. And you run off there, recharges the aquifer. When we did this, we did percolation tests, and we found that the soil there had good percolation rates. It was generally very sandy, and we use that in our model to determine how we're going to collect, store, and infiltrate runoff from the field and all the buildings. Okay, just give a quick picture. This is Kensington Oval. Here you can see the 3 Ws. So right around here, there are a total of 269 storm chambers, and this is a picture showing how they're laid. Okay, they're all interconnected with a pipe so that, one can help the other. 269 all around Kensington, and they form the backbone of the drainage system at Kensington. All right, they're also under the field, pipes laid radially, like spokes of a bicycle, to collect all the infiltration falling on the field, to collect the water in these pipes, perforated pipes in gravel beds, to bring it to the storm chambers as well. And drainage, the drain of Kensington is, in my opinion, top notch. Most people think that as well, but unfortunately in this era, us engineers don't get credit for it. They just compliment how good it was, but nobody ever remembers to say who's the firm that did it or anything. Antigua, Galleon Beach. This is up by Nelson's Dockyard. We were part of a group there doing an EIA. This is perhaps the first hotel site in Antigua in the 60s, 25 villas, and the client wanted to do a redevelopment, take out the villas and get higher density and redo the whole thing, but it required an EIA because it's a environmentally and historic, sensitive and historic site. So we were part of a team doing the EIA. Um, they had a watershed of just close to 14.5 hectares, steep hillsides, and this is a snapshot of a 10,000 map. GBR is the Galley Bay Resort. This is the site, and you can see the steep hillside all around goes up to 100, I think that's 100 meters above sea level. There's, so there's quite a bit of runoff. There's some existing residential subdivision here at the back, but all of this lot in here will be cleared and redeveloped. And these are the watersheds. So I broke it into watersheds, C2, E2, and then created a hydraulic, a model in HydroCAD. This is my initial conceptual plan. Look with the topography of the site. The site actually had a low flood area here, a ponding area now existing. And noticeably down here, there's a very important cemetery, a closed cemetery, but it has a lot of historic value. This is what the um, this is what the HydroCAD model I built looked like, just with all the watersheds coming into reaches and then coming into ponds and so forth. And this is what the final proposed scheme looked like. This is the architect's rendering of what. So you see the watersheds are all called up in these little hexagons. And then we have I use storm chambers again to provide storage and infiltration into the sandy material there. And then along the beach, we didn't want to do this direct discharge to the sea. So at the back beach area, I was using storm chambers. So overflow from that storm chamber will come into this storm chamber and it will infiltrate it through the sand into the sea, but without having a direct discharge to the ocean. And this is the cemetery area that we had to be preserved. There's a more recent project at Galley Bay in Antigua. An all-inclusive five-star resort has 98 rooms and 45 acres on the beachfront. And the characteristic thing about it is it had an 18-acre pond on the back beach. And the pond has a watershed of 235 acres. An extreme flood event in September 24 caused significant flooding and damage because the pond overflowed and the overflow structure was not adequate and it did some damage. So we engaged with the client to do a study and make some recommendations how to fix it. So I modeled it in HydroCAD. So this is a lovely picture of Galley Bay. You can see the 18-acre pond here. Lovely site, beautiful hotel site, really very nice. The pond it makes it even more beautiful. And the reception is here. There's a causeway across the pond, and the rooms are here all along the beachfront. You have the rooms. Okay. So these two ponds overflow here at the southern end, the southwest end, into the sea. But what you see, the top of these hills is the extremity of the watershed, all up here, right? 235 acres. Everything flows down, comes into the pond to get in the sea. So there's clearly a hydraulic problem to be solved. This is a picture of the outlet. You can see it's impacting this. This is actually a restaurant. And it's impacting. There was a little footbridge going into these rooms here. All that got wiped out. And the water just cut its own path there through to the sea. This is what the hydraulic model looks like in HydroCAD. So these are the 18-acre pond here. Salt pond, I call it. And then each watershed was identified and characterized and built a model and put in rainfall conditions, and you can do all kinds of predictions. And this is the recommendation I came up with. um, where this is a coastal road going to the rooms. So we're going to build an overflow weir here in section. You can see it here. And we're going to put in some HDP pipes to discharge into a small pond with a riprap revetment around the side, and then that will overflow into the sea. So we size this for, I actually size it for 25-year storm, but accepting that in a 50-year and 100-year storm, it will overtop the road. So the road here is made out of concrete, so it can overtop the road, and then we would line this part here with geoweb filled with concrete, so that the 100-year, 50-year storms could overtop here to go to the sea. So that's the kind of, I'm just trying to demonstrate the use of HydroCAD and solving problems like this. Now, if we go to Carousel development in Belize, this is a little snapshot of Belize here. And this is the site up here, Carousel, on the northeastern tip of Belize, right on the ocean front. There's a beach there. There are mangroves all along here on the beach. The mangroves are quite wide, maybe 75 to 100 feet depth of mangroves. But the developer bought 1,200 acres of land here. Well, more than that, 10,000, but he's going to develop 1,200 acres here with a new subdivision, villas, hotels, restaurants, supermarkets, a new community. And I was a sub-consultant to the main consultant, and they quickly recognized they had a severe drainage problem. So I was invited to join the team. And this is what the HydroCAD model looks like. I built the model with all the outlets to the sea. And all these ponds, see, there are several ponds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. There are several ponds. This is a quick snapshot of the master plan. Um, you can't read it, very small print, but it's 1,200 acres. And this area is very low lying and subject to, there's actually some wetlands up at the end. And down here, this blue area is all a wetland. So these are villas along the beach and then hotels in the blue. And then these are residential blocks. These pink things here are residential blocks. And the green spaces are big landscape spaces with ponds. And when I finished my design, we had 80 acres of ponds. But the pond was all part of the green landscaping, so it enhanced the aesthetics. But the ponds were there to mitigate the stormwater runoff from the upstream areas coming on through the site. This is my schematic. You can see the ponds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all kinds of ponds. And the green spaces is the open grass landscape area around the ponds. But so the water comes down here and we capture it through the ponds and mitigate the runoff. I threw in a quick slide on the Charles Road Bridge just again to highlight that this shows quite clearly there are I think there are 5 gullies that terminate at Charles Road Bridge. And what happened on that flood, the total watershed is over 2,700 acres. But what was unusual about that, they had approximately 8 inches of rain, but the rain fell over the entire watershed. And that's not normally the case. Sometimes the rain will fall on part of the watershed, but when the rain falls on the entire watershed, then you have a maximum flow problem, which is what happened on that day. So again, I keep saying the solution is to go up in these gullies and build little mini check dams. It does not cost a fortune, but it needs to be done so as to mitigate, again, increase your TC by building check dams to increase storage and lengthen, so you're increasing the time it takes the water to get from here to here. Okay? That is the only practical solution. I also brought a slide here down in St. Andrew, Bodens. This is the Turnasol watershed here, B, 175 acres, and And then the Swans Factory watershed, I call it, 396 hectares. They all terminate at this point, and it's a beautiful point to build a pond. That pond could hold, I don't know, 200 million if you wanted to. Um, and that you run off. This is a lovely watershed. There are only probably a couple of houses up here with some farmers, but it lends itself to capturing the water for more irrigation. Um, this is a part of a study I did for BADMC, include three other sites, but no action. They've just built had these studies done, but have not yet acted on it. I've gone over time, but thanks for listening and any questions.
Well, thanks, Andrew. I don't think we mind you going over time because the content is so interesting, and I think all of the professionals on the call, especially any that are into drainage design, would have taken some interesting pointers from what you shared this evening. So to Andrew's point, we're now going to open up the floor to questions. I will ask, guys, we do have this opportunity to engage Engineer Hutchinson, and I want to encourage you, those especially in practice. I know we have an architect or two on the call. So if you guys can please post your questions, raise your hands, and let's get the question and answer segment on the go. Andrew, until those come in.
Oh,
Alan, you wanted to ask a question?
yes, I'm,
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see your hand raised, so I didn't
yeah,
realize.
I post the questions in the chat, but thank you.
Okay. Go
Excellent
ahead.
presentation. Most of my work is, I'm in Trinidad. I'm a board certified engineer in Trinidad. Have you had to do much? We have lots of flooding in Trinidad. Have you had to do any design barriers? First of all, let me say excellent innovation with the Sponge City design. I found in terms of how you dealt with the innovation with the blocks. Um,
Yes.
Excellent. I found that very, very, I would steal that.
Well, we now have grasscrete pavers which are only 4 inches thick.
Yes,
Concrete
yes.
concrete block is more expensive, but it's 8 inches thick.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
and we didn't have grasscrete pavers then, so we just used the concrete blocks and flipped them on the side, and we were off.
Excellent. We have in Trinidad, we have lots of flooding, as you may know. Our
Yeah,
rainfall is high.
I
Yeah,
went to UE, so I was there for 3 years.
all right. So have you ever done the flood barriers? I know, have you had to look at how you can do flood barriers in some of your design work and your experience with that?
Flood barriers on land.
Yes, with regard to, okay, our flooding is much more, we can have 3 feet of, 4 feet of flooding in low-lying areas in Trinidad.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes what you might want to do is put barriers in front of people's gates or homes and stuff. Had you had experience with that? And that's,
No, no, no. I sympathize with you because Trinidad has a lot of flat land,
yes,
and so when the water from the hills come down and hit the flat land, what are you going to do with it? It's
yeah,
we in Barbados, we to some extent we don't have that. We have gullies.
okay,
We have over 500 kilometers of gullies, and there are beautiful drainage channels, which gives you a lovely exit to the sea.
yes,
So you will get localized areas with flooding as well. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah,
I'm saying on a bigger scale, we
yeah,
are well served by gullies
right,
etched in the coral limestone rock, which are
okay,
beautiful drainage channels.
yes. And then in the Antigua project, I hope I can have one other question. In the Antigua project, you didn't, Antigua has the same problem as Barbados with regards to storage of water. Did they think of storing and harvesting water there in the Antigua project?
Um, that was not part of the brief here. The brief here on both of those projects was, particularly Galilee, was to mitigate the impact of the flooding because it did quite a bit of damage. I mean, what took place was an extreme event. That about 8, 9 inches of rain falling in 24 hours, and the pond overflowed, and that doesn't happen every year. I characterize it as about a 25-year event, but you know, 25-year event is still pretty frequent, and it was has significant damage and cost. But Antigua, believe it or not, Antigua is the home of rainwater harvesting because
Yeah,
Antigua had severe water problems. And many years ago, I worked on a team that designed a dam and all that, but it never got built. But Antigua, there are ponds all over Antigua and for feeding cattle and so, you know.
yeah.
Um, why
I
you
want to.
asked about rainwater harvesting, though?
Well, it's something that may be of interest in Trinidad. We have lots of water, but our losses of water is generally in the distribution, in our lines to their homes, etc. So people may want to do that in Trinidad in some areas where it's difficult to get water. But
Well, I think Trinidad is much like Barbados. We have leakage in our distribution system that's reported by different consultants to be anywhere between 50 and 55%. Um, but the problem is we we are spoiled, put it kindly. Um, as a population here, we've grown in Barbados to expect every morning you turn on the pipe, the water is there, you know.
yeah, yeah,
And now that we're talking about water scarcity, we're a water scarce country, and you've got to, manage your water carefully. We cannot, we can't get people to adopt a culture of rainwater harvesting
yeah,
because it's not part of their existence and their culture prior. But if you compare what happens in Bequia and the Grenadine Islands or what happens in Bermuda, in those islands, if you don't store rainwater, you don't get water, period, full stop.
yeah,
And the Bermuda is not poor for it. Bermuda is a well-developed touristic society, and people live all through the Grenadines Islands. I've been all along through there, and everybody has water. There's nobody's quarreling, but it's all rainwater they're harvesting.
yeah,
Now, to adopt that culture in Barbados or even Trinidad would be a big challenge
yeah.
because they need cultural change, and I'm not sure how you get that done.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation and the sketches, etc., and design. It makes me want to go
Thank
back and do drafting by hand.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Alan, and thank you for joining us this evening from Trinidad. Andrew, we have a question from Andrea White. Andrea, please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for an excellent presentation. I wanted to find out if how you allow or incorporate well, first, if you've seen any impacts from climate change on your drainage design, and how do you allow or accommodate for that? Do you design using a climate change factor? I mean, how has your
Yeah.
design changed because of that, and how is that done?
Yeah. Um, well, I am guided by the 5 C's out of Belize, Caribbean Climate Change Center or something, I think it's called. They have put out quite a bit of useful technical literature on their projections about climate change and its impact on rainfall and so forth. But it's there are some assumptions. I think in this technological era, we have all kinds of fancy tools, and we tend to extrapolate everything and try to predict everything, But sometimes I'm not sure of the the validity of some of those assumptions. But as a design engineer, you're always making assumptions. You're guided by the codes, but then there's a human judgment to come up with the design criteria. Yeah, but the way that the Climate Change Center would speak to that issue is to factor your rainfall somewhere between 5 and 10%. Um, as the worst case scenarios, or increase your rainfall and deal with that in your design.
Right, thank you.
Okay. All right,
So,
thanks,
so
Andrea. And Andrea, where are you from, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm from Jamaica, work at the Port Authority of Jamaica.
Okay, so
now
we've
let
got
me
we've
let
got
me
south and north. Fantastic. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, yeah.
limited time with this presentation, so I didn't drill into all the details. But in terms of the rainfall I use in my modeling, I have found that Barbados has had a fantastic history of rainfall data, all well collated, tabulated, and published. Beautiful. but you will not find that in any other island in the Caribbean. I don't know about Jamaica, but certainly in the East Caribbean islands, you find they have lots of rainfall data, but it's all in the cabinet. Nobody's collated it and, the analysis of it. So as a design engineer, we don't have chance. We don't have the time to go into, you're doing a design project. You don't have time to go and reinvent the wheel and characterize all your rainfall data in an island. I have found the data published by NOAA out of America, which is the National um, uh, Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. I have found that data to be very reliable, and in fact, I use it quite often in my designs. Now, there, you were going to probably say, yeah, but they don't cover the East Caribbean. And the answer is, yeah, they do, because they cover U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and all of America. And they give some fantastic, I mean, they have data going back hundreds of years. And now my simple logic is that the extreme rainfall events that we are considering when we do these stormwater modeling, these extreme rainfall events are all associated with tropical systems coming across the Atlantic. So that tropical system, whether it hits the British Virgin Islands or U.S. Virgin Islands or Barbados or St. Kitts, it's the same tropical system. All right. So I feel very comfortable using the rainfall projections for like St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands or any of the Virgin Islands. They have all the charts there for these extended periods of time. You can't take, well, some statisticians do it, but I don't think it's reasonable to take 20 years of rainfall data and try to extrapolate it to predict what will happen in a 100-year storm. I don't subscribe to that. I prefer to have, in excess of 100 years of data, maybe 150 years of data, and use that data to develop your design criteria. Okay, I just mentioned that. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Andre. Okay, we have a question here from Davine Lynch, or Davin Lynch. Sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly. He says, or she says, excellent presentation. Is there a recommended minimum spacing between drainage wells? I'm thinking with zones of saturation in mind. I'm Trinidadian, but work in the Turks and Caicos Islands, where the topography and soil are similar to Barbados, so drainage wells are the primary used drainage measure. Andrew?
No, I can't give any magic number for the spacing of the wells. What I usually do when I do a design, I would limit the surface area going to my well and say, okay, each well can take 2,000 square feet of paved area or whatever, and then, proportion or size, locate my wells to accommodate that with car parks and that kind of thing, hard standing areas. And what I would usually do as well, anybody has seen my designs of car parks, I always put my catch pit in the middle of the car park and let the entire car park slope to it, maybe 2% slope. All right. Now that's, again, I'm providing storage. So when the gully fills up momentarily or in a short duration, that most of that car park can flood with 2 or 3 inches of water on it, providing storage. So that's my way again of extending the time of concentration. But also, I don't like to put catch pits on the curbs, near the curbs, because when people park your cars and you get out, you don't want to get water around your ankles. So all my car parks, I generally slope to the middle catch pit, provide storage, and it's safe when you park your car to get out. You're not standing up in water. So now Turks and Caicos it's karst limestone. I'm not sure how thick the limestone is there, but the beauty of our limestone in Barbados is that it's karst, so you can find caves, cracks, fissures in it, and it's very porous. So it's good for doing suck well infiltration. I'm not sure if the same thing applies with the type of limestone you have in Turks and Caicos. Plus, don't forget, if you're near the coastline and you have a high water table, suck well is not going to work. because it's going to saturate its zone.
All right. Andrew, there's a follow-up question from that individual as well, saying also drainage wells have a huge range in terms of efficiency based on the water table, sea level, elevation, and the proximity to the sea, etc. Have you seen any measures or solutions that help with this?
No, no. Well, um, the hydraulic test that was done by Stanley Engineering, now Stantec, when they did their one of their studies, water resources study or it was a sewage study they did, they actually dug 2 or 3 wells in the Bell Valley and did hydraulic testing. And what they did, they saturated it first before they actually measured the infiltration rate. You know, there was a procedure to go through, and so they came up with the value I recommend, which was I think it's 18 cubic meters per hour per square meter of surface area. But it's very variable because if you dig a suck well and you hit a big fissure, well then it's going to take 10 times that. But you don't know that until you dig the well. So it's suck wells are strange creatures.
All right. We have a question from Lise Walter. And Lise is asking, are you using the PR/VI 2014 rainfall curves in HydroCAD or the Type 3 storm?
I use the type 3. If you read HydroCAD manual, it recommends all the type 2, the type 1, type 2, type 3, and it recommends the type 3 for the East Caribbean um, island environment. I
Okay,
use the type
thanks.
3 curves, yeah.
Thanks for that, Andrew. Okay, do we have any other persons wanting to engage at this point in time or place a message in the chat? Andrew, in terms of your expansive work throughout the region, how do we get governments to use more science-based data in planning infrastructure and making the changes that need to be made to accommodate the changing climate? What are your thoughts in that regard, sir?
Well, the answer is a building code. Now, many of us would think of a building code in the context of building houses and buildings, but a building code should also cover the infrastructure, drainage, etc., road construction, all those things. So, I mean, the OECS have the OECS building codes. Barbados does not. We still tinkering with our code, and we never made it mandatory or enforceable in law. But I think that is about to change now. But the building code is some islands have done. During my work in Antigua, I came across a very well prepared report prepared by Alpha Engineering out of Trinidad, and they were engaged with the Antigua Barbuda government to prepare drainage guidelines for the whole of Antigua. And I think it was an excellent document. It was really well done. But that, with the enforcement of the building code in Antigua and planning standards, that will come into play because you will now be required to design according to the requirements of the Antigua drainage guidelines.
I
So
mean,
there's some progress.
is this an area, perhaps, Andrew, that we need to engage the university in terms of data collection and collation across the region?
I don't know about the university, but I mean, I've done a lot of work in St. Vincent, and I mean, St. Vincent's water supply is probably 95% surface water. So they need to have, in my opinion, copious amounts of rainfall gauges so they can have maps and predict, all their rainfall runoff conditions and affect their surface water catchments. But I think they've recently got some funding and installed rain gauge stations. But for many, many years, the the data wasn't there. They had a few, you know, I wasn't using I was using the data for doing stormwater drainage design, but they need the water also for the rainfall data for predicting their water resources, which is all surface water. But CDB, I think, has not recently, but in the last 5 or 10 years, provided some funding, and they now have a rainfall rain gauge network. Whether I mean, you can put it in, but whether somebody manages it and maintains it properly is another story.
Okay.
Um,
All right, we have a question from Ashley McPherson, and Ashley is asking for projects where storm tech underground chambers were installed near the coastline. How did groundwater levels and tidal influences affect the design?
um, well, if you can't, there's no benefit to be had in putting storm chambers in the saturated zone. Where I've used them on the beach at Brighton, in the West Indies Rum Distillery. But again, ground level there was about 6 feet above sea level. So I just went down and about 2 feet above sea level, I put in my storm chambers, and then so it's all sandy, so it would infiltrate very nice. But there's nothing to be gained by trying to put a storm chamber below water level. It's just not going to work. It was just saturated.
Okay, thanks for that, Andrew. Andrew, you had mentioned earlier about the need for um, water collection throughout the region to be taken more seriously. I know you've mentioned what is done in Bermuda, where it's law that you have to collect the water. I know it's done in Guyana as well. Quite a few people there collect rainwater and use it. A lot of the older buildings in Barbados would have had cisterns that took the drainage from the roof and so on. Are we in the region needing to enforce and really consider the storage of water in a more serious way than what we're doing now?
Yeah, but it's a cultural thing. If you take Bermuda is a classic example. Everybody in Bermuda knows that even if you submit plans, you will not get a permit to build a building unless your roof is built to the specification. I mean, in Bermuda, they even tell you how you got to build your roof and the size of your tank. Unless you have the tank to meet that specification, your roof to meet that, you will not get a permit to build, full stop. So it's because they realize that's where our water comes from.
Mm.
Catch rainwater, store it. They use, I think it's 5 gallons a square foot of roof area. Um, and it works. And the Grenadines to do the same thing. Um, but we have to be like one of my Caribbean water conferences many years ago. There was a beautiful case study presented. I think it was in the Virgin Islands, in some remote area where people were catching water off their zinc roofs, and they had some acidity in the rain, and it was dissolving the zinc, and the entire community was suffering from well lead poisoning, zinc, because of the acid rain dissolving the metal, and people were drinking the water and didn't realize it. So you have to be careful as well. Um, if you have if you have acid rain, but I don't know if you get I don't know where we get acid rain in Barbados, but it's a culture, Vincent, because as I said earlier, Barbadians are so accustomed to turning on the tap and the water is there. To get them to adopt and change their culture to harvesting rainwater, 50% of the water used in your house is used for non-portable things, washing, laundry, even showering, usually flushing toilets, and then there's a little gardening involved. This has been studied and documented. 50% of the water you use in your house does not have to be portable. And that could be rainwater harvest. You could harvest rainwater and use it for that. But it's a cultural thing.
All right, thanks for that, Andrew. Do we have any other questions for Andrew before we bring this evening to a close, please? I want to encourage members again, please utilize this opportunity. Andrew's offering this information for free. Next time you want it, you may have to pay.
Yeah.
But seriously though, as Andrew said at the beginning of this session, he is willing to share. He is at the point in his career where he wants younger engineers and those in practice to benefit from his many years of experience. Okay, Andrew, we have a question coming through from Esther Joy Oisheng. I hope I got that last name correct. And if I didn't, forgive me. Based on the projects you've worked on, what have you found is the biggest challenge in ensuring that a stormwater drainage system continues to perform well after it's been constructed?
Well, look, the first challenge a drainage engineer has, the most clients and non-engineers don't understand that storms will come in cyclical patterns. We talk about a 5 year, a 1 in 5 year, a 1 in 10 year storm, a 1 in 25, a 1 in 100 year, right? So the first challenge you have when you're designing, which is the economic question. So what should I design for? Should I design for a 5 year storm or a 1 in 25, a 1 in 10 year? It all has economic. The culvert for the 25-year storm is going to be a lot larger than the one for a 5 year storm. So the economics comes into it. But like I said, most non-engineers don't understand that philosophy. They think drainage is drainage. You should do it and you should put one pipe and it solves all your problems. Can't work. You know, it's different to design the buildings. So every drainage study has to, urban drainage is usually designed for like a 10-year return period because of economic reasons. But if you have major bridges or culverts, sometimes you go up to 25-year, but you then have to consider when the 50-year event comes, how is the structure going to deal with it? You got to allow for it to have overtopping. So these are the challenging questions that every civil engineer faces when you go to design a drainage system. And try to explain to, I don't know, your client, whether it's the government or a private sector client, what do you want me to do? You want to design for a 25-year storm, a 50-year, 100-year? What do you want? They don't grasp that point. They think of it as a drain is a drain. Why don't I just build a drain and solve all your problems? But it doesn't work like that. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Okay. Andrew, a lot of our cities, as you're aware, are along the coastline for historic reasons. And we are suffering from the rising sea levels and so on. From your perspective, what should municipal bodies be starting to consider in terms of how we handle stormwater drainage in these areas where we may be getting an increase in the tidal intrusion in land?
Boy, that's a more challenging question than you realize because we keep talking about climate change, we keep talking about sea level rise, but every day I open the paper and I see new buildings going up on the beach in the tidal zone, and then they're going to be impacted. So if there's sea level rise, why are we not instituting planning guidelines so that when the sea level rise occurs 50 years from now, 25, 30 years from now, um, you know, we are ahead of the game. But we're not. We just seem to be just building new developments without any consideration of sea level rise. It's a very short-term thought process. But maybe they're thinking by the time the sea level rise, I will have recovered my investment, so I'm not worried about it. um, certainly in most of the Caribbean islands, you generally get a 2 foot, 0.6 meter tidal rise between high tide and low tide. At full moon, and so you might get a bigger tidal change. But generally, on average, it's about 2 feet or 600 millimeters. And that does affect storm drainage along the coast. Um, a lot of our canals or gullies exit under the road across the beach into the sea. But we have a special problem not only in Barbados, it's in Tobago, Grenada, and all the islands with a littoral sand drift. We have sand moving along the west coast of Barbados every day, and it will block the coastal discharges from these canals, these drains. So when you get the storm, then the canal floods inland before it can breach
Yeah.
the
A case
sand
in point for
blockage.
that, Andrew, is I was just last week in Spightstown, and they've done a considerable amount of work with the drainage aqueduct going out to the sea, but the
Yeah.
mouth of that is completely choked with sand, and they don't ever keep it clear.
Well, there you are. But what will happen? The water will build up to a height until it overtops that. And then the flow of the water over that will cut it out naturally. But until that happens, you can get flooding upstream.
Yeah.
Short term, short term.
Okay, we have a question from Overnine Jacobs. They are planning construction in the water and villas offshore. Some already exist. Um, sorry, I'm trying to understand your question, Jacobs. Can you clarify a bit more? Oh, not a question. It was just a
Uh,
comment. Okay. Leighton, I see you've been adding a couple
yeah,
comments. Is there
what,
anything you
I
want
was
to
asking
interact with? Uh,
what about those already there?
say again, Jacob. So sorry, we didn't hear you clearly. Can you repeat, please?
I was asking what are we planning to do about those that are already there and those that are already planned? Because they
Oh,
don't seem to see that as a problem.
you mean where they build rooms over the sea on piles on jetties?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
no, it's a risk analysis. If you have if you're willing to make that investment, you must be aware of the risks. If you get a tidal surge or if you get a tsunami or something, it's going to take it out. So, depending on the location, each location would have its different challenges. Depending on the location, you might determine that the market requires that kind of accommodation and will pay a premium price for it. So I'm prepared to build that and take the risk, take the chance, because there is a chance. Who knows when you can get a storm surge or you can get a tsunami?
Okay. Leighton, is there any questions you wanted to ask or?
No, well, not a question. Again, Andrew, as I said to you in a different space, great presentation. It's now 1:30 my time where I'm at. I'm actually in South Africa, where I was just presenting earlier today on climate financing and its impact upon our region. So it does tie in with a lot of what is being said here, because some of these issues out of hazards that we experience through hurricanes and flooding and all of that aspect. And how do we finance that? That's one of the challenges I know the governments oftentimes face. But there are different strategies that we could use in order to pay for these things. Coming back to what Andrew's point is, and what many are seeing, because we're seeing the problems. We know they're there as engineers. We see them, but we don't have the power in order to drive the transformation, which is where the money comes down to. And most of the politicians are very short-sighted. They're only thinking 5-year cycles. So we have to get them
Correct,
to think
correct.
under 5-year cycle to a 50-year cycle, basically our design cycle. We need them to at least think as long as our design cycle. And that's a big mind shift, which many are not prepared to make because there's no guarantee beyond that 5-year cycle for them. So unless we can guarantee them that if we build this drain, that they're gonna get revoted, then there's no real interest in it. Or we have to take the bottom up approach, which is get the community to advocate for what it is that they need. Because once the cry is loud enough from the people, because that's where people's money is in their votes. Once they know that their votes are threatened, then you get almost anything you want. So it's to convince the people now that this is in their interest if this thing is done.
Leighton, there's another solution.
What's that?
You need to get more engineers in the halls of politics.
Oh, I have students here on the call, or former students here on the call. And they will tell you, this is something I advocate in the classroom all day, every day. I tell them that this is what we need. We need to be in the seat of power. We are too much on the sidelines as engineers, waiting for the politicians to tell us how to do it, when we are actually with the technical knowledge. But yes, we don't want to be politicians, fine. But then there's no other way unless we're in the seat of power. So somebody has to bite the bullet and actually make that decision.
Leighton, I
Yeah,
thank you for those words of wisdom, and you are echoing the sentiments of a gentleman who is on this call, our former president, Colonel Brown. And he has been encouraging the engineers here in Barbados to get involved in what goes on in the country and not just to sit on the sidelines, as you said, and sit behind their calculators and hope and pray that things will change. Um, I am curious, you did mention that you're currently in South Africa at a conference dealing with climate finances and so on.
Yeah.
What is the appetite internationally for investing in such projects in this region? Obviously, we are small economies, and it just takes one serious impact to literally set us back decades. What is the appetite internationally that you're seeing at present for that type of climate financing?
I won't lie, Vincent, that is grim. But the truth is, currently we're working on a book that we're gonna have to write. Because coming on to the conference, everybody's saying we need to put it in a book based on what we're presented. And when you look at where the money is flowing from the World Bank, IMF, from the big players in the space, it's not moving to the whole idea of where we could be more resilient. There seems to be this strong interest in keeping us in a cycle. So there's a whole reconstruction cycle or a loop that takes place. We have the disaster and we go through the process of the infrastructure damage, and then how we tackle that in terms of financing it is to borrow. And the borrowing most of the times is as a loan and not as a grant. So it carries with it a debt. And so therefore you find we don't have any leverage or any fiscal space where we could now be able to take advantage of the opportunities that are in the space. So what we end up doing is rebuilding the same thing we had before, which is the same vulnerability level that we had before we had the hazard, and nothing changes. And they seem to be quite contented with this, knowing fully well, as you see at all the COPs, they make all the promises, oh, we're going to give a lot of money to the small island states. But the truth is, it doesn't happen. It's a lot of lip service. So my view, or one of the positions that we're putting forward, I can give you one of the examples from Jamaica. One of the shifts that we did was parametric financing. And the parametric insurance allowed us to kind of set the case as to what level of damage we're willing to absorb, and therefore triggered instant payment. So for example, with a hurricane, if we say a category 3 hits, irrespective of the level of damage, once a category 3 hits, that and above, automatic payment takes place. And so you're therefore able to finance a faster rate and be able to do the recovery in a quicker space and time. Right now in Jamaica, they're pushing the NARA, well, it was now an act where they want to do PPP projects using maybe about $150 million and above, big projects. And they want to try and use that as an avenue to kind of help with the reconstruction and the resiliency. Now, of course, there's a lot of questions around it. I have posed these questions politically or in the media as well, because there are some nuances to how it's being done. But the idea is correct because it tends to bypass or fast track most of the bureaucracy that we have in the system that stifles the growth and development that we need. But there are opportunities in the space, and I think as a people, we need to come together more, have these types of conversations, look at what we're doing, and actually go and implement them. We're doing a lot of talking. We're very good at talking in our region, but we're not so good at action. And so we need to move from talk to action.
Thanks, Leighton. And I really want to thank you for joining us. Yes, 1 o'clock there, so obviously it's very late your time. But I thank you for being interested enough to join this session with us this evening. And almost on cue, Trevor sends a comment basically saying perhaps the answer is for presentations such as this to be more public rather than focus on technical professionals. So Trevor, yes, I agree. But I think we also need to get the technical professionals on board. So when we go to the public, we go with one voice. But certainly, I think we do have to continue to raise, and this is not only here in Barbados, guys, this is across the region, raise our public profile in informing our various publics of information like this, especially now that it's hurricane season when it's very pertinent, where people are listening. People like me that live in low-lying areas, I've had 2 foot of water in my house, so I appreciate this topic very much. But again, we do have to advocate whenever we have those opportunities, go out to the town hall meetings and stand up and say things, you know. And I think that is something that we all do have a duty, not only from the association in terms of elected members, but you as the professional in your community doing something that really matters. Andrew, I want to offer you some closing comments, sir.
Well, as I said, at my tender age, I feel I've been batting 55 years, and it's time that I share some of my experiences with engineers coming behind me, and that's the reason I'm doing this. Because it's been one of my regrets that BAPE over the years has not been able to get engineers to share their experiences. I think I get the feeling sometimes that people are wary of presenting because they think you can only present if you've made some new discovery, some new invention. But not at all. All of us have experiences in projects, and each project represents a new experience, and there's something there to share. And, you know, engineering is a very broad, diverse subject. So all of us can't know everything. But if we share, then some others may get smarter by listening to your experiences. So that's the spirit in which I do it. Fortunately for me, in my 55 years, I've done projects in practically every island in the East Caribbean, and Bermuda. I've done a couple of projects in Bermuda. I've not gone into Trinidad nor Jamaica, but I've covered the other islands quite pretty extensively. Anyhow, thanks for listening, and I have several other presentations I can work on over time.
Yeah, and we've already spoken about one that will be coming in a couple months. Just to pique your interest, persons who are here. Andrew will be returning to do a presentation in a couple months' time, which will speak to setting up an engineering consultant business and
Yes,
giving his thoughts, his experiences again on what that looks like. There may be some of you who are looking to go into private practice. And to Andrew's point, it's always good to hear somebody else's story of how they've done it, what pitfalls they might have faced, so that it may save you from making some of those pitfalls and inform your choices and processes going forward. So that's another session that we look forward to sharing with Andrew in the coming future. And I hope that some of you who are on the call tonight will be able to jump on and again glean from the wisdom that is on offer. So, Andrew, thank you on behalf of the association again for sharing with us this evening. And we certainly do look forward to future engagements with you. I just want to do some quick reminders for everyone on the call before we break tonight. Those who are in the Barbados Association of Professional Engineers, I want to encourage you to go onto the website, register, and as I said, look around, see what is there, and get interested and know what's going on. Also, just a reminder, this was a CPD event tonight. So if you are outside of Barbados, please reach out to the BAPE Secretariat. Again, you can find the website and reach out there. Kenton has the email up on the screen right now. So if you want to claim your CPD points, reach out to the office and Stacy will be able to send those to you. Likewise, the local engineers, please make sure you claim those points for tonight's session. Quick reminder that our annual dinner is coming up on the 10th of October. And if you would wish to partner with us as one of our sponsors, we'd ask that you reach out and we can have those discussions now. There are several sponsorship packages available for persons who may want to support our webinars or our journal publications. And finally, the engineering project of the year and the fellow applications, those are going to be out very shortly if they aren't already. And we are asking that you please submit your projects for consideration for this year's engineering project of the year, which is awarded at our annual dinner, which this year is the 10th of October. I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. It's been a very interesting presentation, and I'm sure those of you who are certainly in the design pertaining to drainage, etc., would have picked up some important pointers from Engineering Fellow Andrew Hutchinson this evening. Thank you all, and I wish you a good evening.